Thank you, Silke. I'm now very happy to announce our keynote speaker, Brewster Kahle, who is the founder and digital librarian of the Internet Archive, which is working tirelessly to preserve all possible kinds of items from our cultural heritage and make them openly accessible to all. Brewster has witnessed his fair share of attacks on this endeavor, both from the political and the commercial front, and I'm very curious to hear his recommendations on what we as libraries should and can do against this overwhelming amount of, let's say, ill will towards the public effort. So Brewster hasn't brought any slides, but we're very interested and happy to hear what you recommend, and we hope for a positive message.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I will try to have some positive measure here, but message. But I think the request was to sort of say, what do we do? And so I'll try to mix a little bit of positive in all of this. Welcome, and thank you for inviting me. I'm in San Francisco right now, and I thought just going and imparting a bit of sort of how does it look like from our seat, and it may be in the seat of a lot of libraries or where we may be seeing more. Libraries are under attack from a number of directions. The United States is maybe leading in this, but it's not the only one. There are book bans that are severe and awful. There's criminalization of librarianship. So making it so that librarians can be personally and institutionally attacked by anybody under criminal penalties based on the materials that are in the libraries. There's more and more defundings, and that's continuing. So that's not just a political thing recently. That's just defundings. Cyber attacks seem to be on the rise, and probably the most structurally challenging is a license-only world that is being put forward by major media conglomerates that will hollow out libraries in the digital era. So what should we do? I thought I could share some of our experiences and say how we've been trying to deal with things, and then see if we can get best practices going of how to adapt to a changing environment. But let's go for some good news first. Um, the Internet Archive hit a milestone last month that is, I think, really pretty fantastic, which is that the Internet Archive added its trillionth web page. So it turned 1 trillion web pages in the web archive. And this is, okay, terrific, hooray for the Internet Archive or the World Wide Web. But I'd say really what that is people are awesome. People want to share. People really have things they want, and they're up for sharing it for no cost to the whole world permanently. 1 trillion web pages is a lot. It's maybe 1 billion people's voices are now in the library. That's not been accomplished before in terms of the world, in terms of the technology, but also in terms of the willingness of people to want to participate. I mean, at a time when we keep hearing about negative things, corporations doing these terrible things, governments having real troubles, and then some staggering into dark areas. People are great. Another good thing is we libraries are needed more than ever. That the level of propaganda, disinformation, paid problems is on the rise, and libraries are needed more than ever. And I'm happy to say the Internet Archive is being used more than ever. So at least from where we are, we're able to go and produce services that people are turning to more and more. Okay, now it's our time to live up to it, but that's a good sign. Another, before I turn a little more dark, the libraries are working together more. It's difficult for libraries to work together. We don't tend to work together all that well. But for instance, there's 1,250 libraries that are cooperating to build the web archives using a tool called Archive It. Archive It is a subscription or paid service by the Internet Archive that helps libraries build collections of web pages that they're then searchable and they can download them and the like. But it also is a cooperative mechanism of building the web collections that become the Wayback Machine. So 1,250 libraries is a lot. And on the book scanning front, it's way over 500 libraries. I don't exactly know what it is, have contributed their physical collections to be digitized and hosted for free public access, bulk downloading, the whole shebang if it's public domain, to be used by anybody for any purpose. That is a fantastic indication of sharing. But libraries, we've got a bit of a challenge at the moment. In the US, we're in trouble, but we're not alone. Let me give you little updates on some of the things that have gone on in lawsuits. So some of the major corporations and the collecting rights organizations, those sorts of people, really want to make sure that people have restrictions, deep restrictions, much more than what libraries do. So on library lending, a practice that we've been practicing for 10 years, when with hundreds of other libraries for 10 years, well, when the COVID happened and all the libraries were shut, many libraries turned to us and said, "Hey, help us," and they all jumped on. And so we could turn around very quickly to go and try to support the collections that people had already bought on a one-to-one basis to a much broader range. And well, this was not the publisher's idea of a good time. They took a lawsuit that they'd been working on for years, they'd said, and then decided that was the time to sue the Internet Archive and therefore all the libraries that were lending in the United States. Still, because we weren't closed, all the libraries, physical libraries closed, so the Internet Archive was still there, and they wanted to make sure that that was put out of off the net. So, and we lost that one, which was a real, I think, is a bad maneuver on the part of the courts in the United States, but we lost. Some good news is there was a similar lawsuit in the Netherlands to go and make it so that libraries could lend ebooks, and they won that one. And of course, the publishers then appealed to Luxembourg, and still in Europe, they decided they wanted libraries, which is really quite encouraging. Unfortunately, the libraries haven't used this win to go and lend ebooks. And so that's disappointing, but it's at least encouraging that there are courts that are pro-library. When we were sued over another project we'd been doing for 10 years, which was making 78 RPM records available. This was a copycat lawsuit that came within 1 hour of the book publisher lawsuit being settled. So, and it was by the same lawyers. So it's all the same people that basically are just going around and bashing on libraries. The same lawyers, same people behind the scenes. It's a copyright cabal. So that lawsuit was settled. We're still here, but the decimation in the United States to library collections is continuing and brought to you by the publishers and the collecting rights organizations. So that's not good. In the beginning, and then there's a cyber tax. These have been ongoing for libraries for a while, but the Internet Archive, 2 weeks before our presidential election, the Internet Archive got hit with three different types of cyber attacks, basically all at the same time. Um, there was a denial of service attack, which you guys may be seeing now, actually because of AI companies strafing you. But this was a concerted, like, just take down the Internet Archive cyber attack on DDoS. Then our JavaScript on our website was defaced, indicating an intrusion, and also our user database of emails was drained based on flaws that we had. So this caused us to sort of pull the ripcord and drop offline for 5 days to understand what the level of corruption of our systems were. Um, and we worked very, very hard to basically throw in a bunch of security measures very, very quickly so that we could come back up well before the election in the United States, because how much we were used as part of different services. So it was very stressful, and we now have, unfortunately, lawyers on staff to deal with publishers and rights organizations, and now we have cybersecurity people. Instead of building better services, are working on just defending us against um, attacks of different forms, which continue actually. So we're having more problems. Sometimes it's these occasional DDoSs, and there's different people poking and prodding at the Internet Archive now constantly. So I don't know quite why some of these have changed. I mean, having three attacks right at the time of the election is pretty clear cut, right? Just so chaos out there. So we were able to respond within 5 days, I think large part because we'd written all our own code. So we had everybody on staff, and we have very low turnover, so people are still here. But there are other libraries like Seattle Public, I think was knocked offline for a couple months, Toronto Public, couple months, Calgary Public, a couple months. British Library continues to actually have some services not available now after years. So this is becoming an area of problem for all of us. And so it's challenging to deal with these. How to do it? Well, shore up some of your systems. I thought the way that I could maybe break down how we've approach these is to go over the four rights of digital libraries. And if somebody would be kind enough to post into the chat, ourfuturememory.org is a website that is a collective action of libraries to say these are our rights in the digital world, to be able to collect materials in digital form, to preserve digital materials in digital form, provide controlled access, lending to digital materials, and to cooperate with other memory institutions. And most people, when I say these things to people, they say, duh, that's what libraries do. It's like, yes, that is what libraries do. We collect, preserve, lend, and we interoperate with other libraries. But the big publishers are saying we're not allowed to collect, we're not allowed to preserve, we're not allowed to lend, and we're not allowed to perform interlibrary loan and other services in this digital era. And this makes no sense. I don't see anybody in the legislature going and saying, yeah, we don't really need libraries anymore, or we don't want them to be anything more than customer service departments for for commercial database products. We want a robust library system, and this is what it means to be a robust library system. Let's go down those four, and then we'll have some Q&A. We need to be able to collect materials in digital form, and really that is required to do our jobs. And when we say collect, that's usually buying or getting them into for free based on donations, or they were never charged for in the first place. So we need to be able to purchase these and really purchase them under rule of law, not rule of restrictive licenses. So the idea of having a patchwork of things in our collections that are uh, under license doesn't make any sense at all. So let's use our monies to support local authors, small publishers, and our local news organizations. We have funding to be able to support these, but often it just goes into these mega corporations and doesn't actually find its way to authors. And so let's go and change this. Let's build our collections, buy things, and do our jobs. We're working in the Internet Archive Europe on a system called Book Server to make it so that people on handhelds can go and buy and borrow books. And when you buy a book, you really have bought it. And if you borrow it from any library, then you're going directly to the libraries to borrow books that are on their spinning disk, so there's not a surveillance organization going on in between. Let's go to protocols, not platforms. Let's make it so that our patrons are connecting directly to our servers and make this work. So that book server is to try to make that smooth and easy. It's building on the OPDS frameworks and things like that that have been used sometimes mostly for these lending systems that have surveillance problems. Another that we're working on the collecting materials in digital form is Democracy's Library. The idea is to go and democracies need an educated populace, so they tend to publish openly. And they unlike corporations or authoritarian regimes. Democracies need people to be educated, so they tend to publish openly. We should rise to the occasion in the digital era to build democracy's library. So all the published works of governments at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels, bringing these together and allowing them to be downloaded in bulk for new services to be built. So we launched this with the United States and Canada. And Canada, working with the Internet Archive Canada, has now finished its all of its print materials um, from the federal government and is starting to work on the provincial print materials, but also has done a distributed work using Archive It to go and archive municipal, provincial, and federal websites in Canada, so that those are also preserved. The In the United States, there's work to do mass microfiche digitization, microfilm print um, of the federal government. Now also California's uh, print materials, and other states are starting to follow. So the idea is to try to build this democracy's library to get these materials online. And then the key part is for all of us to start to build new services that are appropriate for our constituents, our patrons, using these materials that we got not necessarily just ourselves, but from other libraries cooperating. So Democracy's Library. Preserving materials. Preserving digital materials is not just this sort of what you read in some of our old laws that don't make much sense of, well, they can just be dark copies and the like. It cannot be. If things are not actively used, they won't last very well. I think the idea of dark archives is a terrible idea. We need to be able to repair, back up, reformat. So continuously coming up with new formats to go and try to keep these materials available and for their long-term existence. We should make active backups, of course, which isn't as easy as you think. Witness some of the problems that we've had in some of our library partners that have lost materials based on cyber attacks. Machines are getting less expensive. They're now 30 terabyte hard drives, which is kind of astonishing. And so we can have offline copies using disks as tape to be able to make it back if we actually do have some preservation troubles that are in that kind of realm. So that's collecting, preserving, providing access. Limited controlled digital lending is one approach. Other approach is interlibrary loan. Also, bulk access by other libraries. How do we go and move our materials around to enable advanced research techniques? These AI tools are kind of awesome. We should be the place that people are turning for their data sets. Let's build public AI. let's go and make it so that people can go and use these AI tools built by cultural heritage institutions and our research organizations and our universities, leveraging our collections to go and help solve some of the big problems that are out there, say climate or healthcare or whatever, so that you go and use these tools to do new and different positive things for humanity. This isn't necessarily just draining them all into a couple of big corporations. This is going and using these tools in new and different ways. Our libraries in general have been threatened by publishers to not do what it is even in Europe, which is clear cut, which is the Article 3 of the Copyright Act, that we're allowed to go and do these things. But a lot of libraries, because of the threats, are or the attempts to change the words of what those that article means, are not participating in building the AI tools that really I think we're going to need to go and make our collections, which are very diverse and wild and wonderful, useful. We've been digitizing, for instance, CABI, the Center for Agricultural and Biological Information out of London. They shut down their whole offsite repository, donated to the Internet Archive. We've digitized these things that it's basically reports from the empire over a century of pests and agricultural records. And these are very useful because as climate changes, the lines move. So whatever's going on, used to be going on in Mexico is now going on in Louisiana. So let's go and leverage our collections that we've spent decades, centuries building, and these new tools to be able to make them much more useful. The NOAA, NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, is a large part becoming a lot smaller in the United States based on our political changes, and they've donated their regional libraries, and we're digitizing those to be able to get all this information actually leverageable using these new tools that we can do through lending, through interlibrary loan by going and doing that at lightning speed, as well as using some of the AI tools. Let's cooperate with other memory institutions. So I'm listed to the 1,200 in terms of going and working with Archive and some of those tools. The Internet Archive has been building up things like the Internet Archive Canada since 2006, and it's getting to be pretty great. They've got a headquarters, they've got now a data center, and it's Internet Archive Canada is starting to do services and data mining services. There's Internet Archive Europe, started in 2004. Didn't it kind of got up to 20 people and then back down again because some of the restrictions in Europe were so severe that I think we can see how severe they were based on, well, the national libraries feeling that they couldn't even go and archive their own country's materials and make them available to their own populations. It just indicates that Europe has policy problems that are really quite severe. But there's, as I said, there's this copyright exemption. So that's let's use these to go and bring our collections to life. Internet Archive Switzerland has just been started. There's Internet Archive Aruba, which the idea is to take their collections that they put on the Internet Archive and bring them back on soil by having servers that are in Aruba, and that's been going on, for instance, in University of Victoria in Canada. So the idea of decentralizing makes all the sense in the world. So these are approaches that we've been taking to cooperate with other libraries and would very much like to work with yours. So all in all, buy materials. If they're for sale, make sure you archive things under rule of law, not rule of restrictive licenses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brewster. First of all, I can say that I can relate very much to the pains of a cyber attack because ZBW, my own institution, was also attacked 2 years ago, and it made an enormous mess, as you can imagine. Right. So you touched on a lot of very interesting points. I first have two small questions about archive it. So that any library can pitch in, not just US-based libraries. So this is the world
Yeah.
round. Okay.
Yes, there's sometimes foundations go in and pay for whole swaths of like small historical societies but a lot of the larger libraries spend a few $1,000s or euros a year to go and subscribe to this, and it helps keep us afloat. It's about 1/3 of our income of the Internet Archive comes in through services such as that. So thank you for those that are members of Archive It. But it's a good service. So please use it. There's also Vault, which is a mechanism of going and storing your own materials. And if money's a problem or you want a year off or whatever, of course we're mission aligned.
Right. And I was wondering if those open databases then have a problem with crawlers, since you said, well, crawling is a problem right now, and I
Oh,
guess
and in terms of our crawling or other
no,
people
not your
crawling us?
crawling. I mean, like hostile crawling, or let's say big tech crawling. Are they
Oh yeah.
attacked also?
I
Because
crawling has become what a world. I mean,
yeah,
both ways. So we're running into more and more paywalls for a lot of the news things. We're running into aggressive technological measures of people trying to prevent archival crawling. And some of that is in response of very aggressive AI crawling going and trying to use it. So what we've been doing is we've been building data sets and saying, go here, here's the APIs. Download them in bulk. Come on, we've got hundreds of gigabits per second. Go, just don't sink our services, and strafing our live services. But this cat and mouse game has gotten so severe that people are just doing what appear to be distributed denial of service attacks, but um, are actually just AI companies trying to or researchers trying to get at materials. So I think we need to live up, open up as much as we can, and hopefully people sort of pay attention to the rules.
yeah, I thought that was a very interesting aspect also, because I have also been saying we need to be radically open, but even in the library community, where open science, open source, open access, etc., are kind of the core values, have been saying, but now all these big tech companies are also getting to our data, and shouldn't we kind of protect it? And they even have this reflex of shutting everything down just so that big tech cannot get at it. And for me, that's not the right way to go. So we need to be radically open and then push for even the closed data sets to be open for publicly funded institutions. But what would you say to those people who say, but if we open it, then also the bad guys can get to it?
Bad guys. Well,
No, well,
we're,
bad guys,
I
okay,
guess
I'm not differentiated
we're
enough.
our
Commercial,
basic point of view
profit-oriented ones.
is that we should let the robots read.
Mm.
We did this the last time with the search engines, which basically, at least the United States did. And as best I can tell, really, Europe never allowed crawling, right? So it never had a search engine that could be invested in because the regulatory environment was so negative. So there was never really a search engine. There was never user contributed content in Europe. The publishers wouldn't allow it. There wasn't uh, social media really in a real way, and you might say that was a good thing in Europe because the publishers wouldn't allow it. So United States let the robots read, and we had a dot-com boom for better or for worse. You can say, but a lot of that happened. But Japan didn't, Europe didn't. But interestingly, so with this AI round of the same, Europe has got this one exemption, which is very narrow. Switzerland is much more open. That's why there's thousands of AI researchers outside of Zurich, and startups going on, and also Japan has said let the robots read. And the United States is just a mess of lawsuits. And the lawsuits are not great because those tend to be settled and they get settled among the people at the table, and libraries and people are not at that table. So, where in the industrial policy in the United States is going towards monopoly or um, very powerful conglomerates of tech companies and these enormous publishers that are that's going to make it so that, you know, if you're trying to do a climate GPT at a university, it will be seen as risky. So this doesn't make any sense. So we are a let the robots read and judge them based on their outputs. But that's not necessarily what's going on in the United States or Europe somewhat, Switzerland better, Japan great.
Well, I think one of the problems is that, well, these crawlers actually cause open repositories to crash. But you could also say, well, then that's the fault of the repositories that they don't enforce or like amp up their capabilities enough so that they just don't crash
Well,
when
yeah, a
there's,
lot of us have APIs to go
yeah.
through as opposed to just crawling like nuts. And if we don't, let's try to do that. Yeah, I think that some of the crawlers are being absolutely completely obnoxious, but uh it is our chance, we have a new user community coming to town. So let's learn how to do that. We adapted to things like being slash dotted back in the day when we got super popular and we'd crash. And then we just got stronger. And let's build services that make sense to go and offer these data sets in ways that, this is linked data, right? How do we make that all work? And some of this is evolving as we speak.
Right. Okay. Well, that's an interesting message, like let the robots read without restrictions. I also thought it was a very interesting aspect in general that you said, well, I'm not sure if you said it that simply, but that there's too many restrictions in the EU, whereas the discussion that I'm hearing in the EU is that we still don't have enough restriction what with regard to what uh, big players can do with our data. So in Europe, the intention still seems to be to get more restrictions in place. And you're saying there's too much of them, too many of them.
Well, and to let the robots read, it's within the legal context of wherever you are. That's our general approach. But in the United States, we don't let the robots read and strafe, for instance, the Wayback Machine or copyrighted materials in our book collections, things like that, because it's not legally understandable. But in Europe, you've got this one narrow exemption, which is
Hmm.
to let cultural heritage institutions um, and research organizations let the robots read to go and be able to do scientific research. Great. Isn't that awesome? But yeah, there's a lot of threats going around to make it so that libraries won't even be able to do what seems to be pretty clear cut. I'm no lawyer. And so, yeah, it's restrictions, restrictions, restrictions. And I think that as one person said, with these AI tools, if you're bringing up your kid in the Netherlands or in Germany, you don't want to have your basic way of, okay, so how am I going to instruct my kids? I'm going to have a choice between an LLM with an American accent or an with a Chinese accent. That's probably not the best distinction you want. And you want your LLMs to have the best information in it as possible. You want your doctors to have not just some licensed corner of the universe of to figure out how to go and repair your heart. You actually want to have them have the best information. And how do we have that happen in an environment that right now is all about locking down restrictions, and those only you think, oh, that's going to really help authors. Like, there's not a lot of historical precedent for that. It might go and help some very large media conglomerates go and make some more money. But the idea of authors getting it out of that, um, I I don't see the publishers being any more magnanimous with their authors going forward. So I think we have different things that we can do. Let's go and buy things from local publishers, local authors. Let's go and local newspapers. Let's use our monies to build a publishing ecosystem that's a good one, where frankly, we've done a lot of damage to ourselves by going and building up these large scale commercial academic publishers. They're there because we paid for them. And now they're coming out and making it so we can't get to things that we have long since paid for in new and different ways. So I think we need to rethink how we use our budgets, and what libraries are for in the digital age should be closer to what we have in those four rights than what it is we've been backed into in the last 10, 20 years.
I think that is a perfect message. Thank you so much again for your talk. We were very happy to have you here.
Thank you
And
very
I
much. I
don't,
appreciate it.
we did too. And I don't see any more questions in the chat. So thank you again. And maybe you can now have breakfast or something.